Yeah, and we have one other, but there's a couple that we're hoping will be here.
What, John, where's he? He's out? Sick?
Has anybody texted Bob? He's our alternate. Maybe he can make it in.
Go ahead and meet, couldn't you, taking action?
Yeah, I guess we don't have to, do we have to take action on any of these?
No, it's mostly informational agenda today. The only action would be the approval of the minutes, but we can.
I would suggest we have Justin go ahead.
All right. Fabian, can you start? We're gonna start anyway. Start recording. Please.
Good to go.
All right. Is my mic live? Yes. Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday, March 14th, 2024, and this meeting of the MAPC Advanced Plans Committee is called to order. Let's start with roll call, which is going to be a problem. Deborah Foster is here. Joe Johnson.
Here.
Brian Fry.
Present.
John McKay. Absent. Cindy Miles is absent. Hugh Nix is absent. And Chuck Warren is absent. We do not have a quorum, but we're going to proceed. The first item on the agenda is approval of the meeting summary. Let's defer that and see if we can get a quorum for later. We'll go back to it at the end of the meeting. Number 3 on the agenda is the solar energy in the county moratorium update. And I don't know how many of you have been paying attention, but this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Justin Constantino with the Planning Department here to provide you with a brief update on the solar moratorium. So for those of you that are unaware, the Advanced Plans Committee began discussing potential changes to the Unified Zoning Code regarding large-scale utility solar back in October of 2023. After meeting to discuss several times on the subject, on February 15th, 2024, the Advanced Plans Committee reviewed draft changes to the Unified Zoning Code and recommended approval to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. On February 22nd, the MAPC voted to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners by a vote of 13-1. On March 6th, the Board of County Commissioners voted to extend the moratorium for an additional 6 months to September 13th for the purpose of hiring a professional consulting firm to review best practices and assist with the process.
Justin, was that a unanimous vote?
It was, yes, sir.
Thank you.
The Board of County Commissioners requested that staff provide them with an update on our progress at their meeting on April 3rd. Staff will continue to provide updates to the Advanced Plans Committee regarding our progress on the moratorium and any potential next steps. So again, just to reiterate, we will be meeting with Board of County Commissioners on April 3rd to provide them with an update, but overall, the moratorium, as I mentioned before, will be extended until September 13th. Any questions on that? I know this group has committed a lot of time and energy to that, so just want to provide you all with a brief update, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
What was the extended date? September
13th.
Thank you.
Would be the end of the moratorium. You're welcome.
All right, thank you. And are you our presentation for number 4 as well?
I am. I will be up here probably throughout most of these. It's probably a welcome change to all of you considering the length of our previous meetings, but generally informational update type agenda items for this morning. But for agenda item number 4, public notification letters, basically this topic started because we had interest in reviewing our notification letters. That interest began back in July of 22 for the purpose of potentially simplifying our notification letter process. Options include potentially simplifying the language used in the letter, as well as exploring who receives those letters. Currently, the recipient of those letters are the property owners, but there was some discussion about whether or not the occupant should receive those letters as well. There was discussion about expanding the mailing notice distance, as well as potentially including additional languages, including Spanish, Vietnamese. The committee has discussed this topic on several occasions dating back to September of 2022. Staff has begun soliciting feedback from the district advisory boards. So far, we have gone out and done a presentation for, I believe, 5 of the 6 district advisory boards, getting as much feedback as we can. Our intent is to compile that feedback received at those DAB meetings and present our findings to all of you at a further date. So we're currently in the exploratory process of getting more information back from those district advisory boards, and we will provide all of you with a full update once we have that. Any questions? Yes.
Justin, I saw the presentation at the District 5 advisory. There was also considerable discussion about the expanding of the notification area and the cost involved with that. Has that been presented to this body, that presentation?
I don't believe that full presentation has. I think our intent is to do that in the near future while also including in the feedback that we've received from the district advisory boards. But I'm glad you brought that up because that was certainly part of the consideration as we review our existing process, is looking at whether or not, the cost of going beyond our 200 feet requirement, who should receive that. There would be additional cost, obviously, that would be for both the city as well as the applicant themselves, because currently they're required to provide a notification list, the applicant is, but then also there is considerable staff time and effort in mailing those notifications. So that was certainly a variable in that discussion.
Yeah, because I remember in some of the examples you provided, it was a 10-fold increase for the applicant.
Yes.
So it's quite a dramatic change.
Yes.
Now, Brian, back before the entire effort was diverted onto commercial solar regulation, we did have a presentation on this issue that was fairly extensive, and that was the primary balancing act. Yes, we want to give people as much notification we can, but the cost of it has to be rational. So trying to find a rational balance was what the main discussion came down to, I think.
Okay, so when you say we wanted to give the most notification, was that this body or was that certain
That was this
individual?
committee.
This committee made that recommendation to expand the notification area?
No, we discussed it. It was presented as something that had been brought up at various DABs and in public
And it
comment.
had come before the council at a workshop when I was serving as well, so I
Yeah.
do remember that discussion.
I think
But
that was
didn't know
back in
if this-
July.
I didn't know if this body had weighed in and made a recommendation on expanding the notification area.
I don't think we ever actually made a motion. We discussed a whole lot of options and again, kind of came down to the cost effectiveness balance of what we could, as a city, afford to do reasonably.
And so would then the process be this coming as a recommendation from this body to MAPC on what the next steps would be?
Yes. Yeah, we're gonna have our final DAB meeting on April 1st. So as soon as we get that information and compile everything that we've learned thus far, we will provide an update with this group, and then ultimately the Advanced Plans Committee will have a role in making any formal recommendation.
All right, thank you.
All right, is that everything on item 4? All right, Justin, are you also telling us about College Hill, item 5 on the agenda?
I am.
All right,
So
go.
planning staff is working with College Hill stakeholders to develop a plan for the College Hill neighborhood. The plan would serve as a guide for future policies, programs, and infrastructure. Staff is working with a consultant and a 15-member steering committee that was appointed by the City Council back in November of 2023. The steering committee consists of College Hill residents, business owners, and stakeholders. On March 25th, so coming up towards the end of this month, the project team will host a community kickoff meeting from 4:30 p.m. until 7 o'clock p.m. at Grace Presbyterian Church, which is located at 5002 East Douglas Avenue. The meeting will allow stakeholders to provide input on several topics involving the College Hill neighborhood, including housing, mobility, development, parks, community image, and more. Staff is in the process of getting the word out about the event. We're hoping to have a strong turnout. We've printed flyers and yard signs and have mailed individual postcards to over 3,000 individual addresses. So those postcards went out yesterday, and we will be receiving flyers for the event to distribute to steering committee members to place throughout the neighborhood and distribute to neighborhood residents and business owners. The goal is to receive feedback on the desires of the neighborhood and formulate an online public survey to assist in the development of the plan. Again, the Advanced Plans Committee role would be to look at that. Ultimately, the plan would need to be approved by the City Council. So we're very excited to be at this point with the plan. Our first public kickoff meeting, again, March 25th. I'm available for any questions.
Questions for Justin? All right, and I think then we move on to item 6, MAPD update.
Yeah, just a quick update on both of these items. There are two listed under this update. The first is short-term rental licensing. Back in the spring of 2023, the Advanced Plans Committee received a presentation on the proposed short-term rentals regulatory changes and voted to recommend that the MAPC initiate an amendment to the Unified Zoning Code. The MAPC subsequently voted to approve the proposed UZC amendments that include a short-term rental license option. The program was approved by the Wichita City Council and the Board of County Commissioners. I just wanted to provide you all with an update because the short-term rental owners must acquire a license by March 12th. So we are just a few days past that. I wanted to let you know that if the short-term rental is owner-occupied, then the unit must be licensed by March 12th, so just a couple days ago. And that date is due to it being 6 months after the effective date of the ordinance, which is back in September 12th. If that short-term rental requires additional zoning approval, if there's any kind of zoning change or zoning classification change, then the unit must be licensed by September 12th of 2024. So that's 12 months from the effective date of the ordinance back in September of 2023. We have seen a steady influx of applicants seeking a license. So we do have planners that are processing those applications and getting those licenses out. So I will say that since passage, we have had several individuals seeking that license who operate short-term rentals. That's just an update, but I'll open it up to any questions.
I would just, I know that you're still processing applications, but I would be interested to hear eventually how many there are, since one of the things we discovered was that we really didn't know. Mm-hmm. We were just guessing.
Yeah, I don't know how many exactly we have.
J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Planning, for the record. There are approximately 500. There could be 550 by now, and that's a fairly educated guess from a company who tracks those units. So somewhere between 500 and 550 is what we think it would be. All
right, thank you. Any other questions on this topic?
Is that all being handled in-house by MAPD or MABCD, or was there some talk at one point about hiring a service that would track and monitor all those applications, but is it all being done in-house then?
So MABCD is not involved unless there be a complaint and an issue would come up. MAPD is the primary authority that's handling this, right now mainly me. We are working with a company. We have hired a company, and they're going to help us actively monitor. They have proprietary software that can ID where short-term rentals are just from public sources. So we wouldn't know. We'd only have a complaint. And frankly, having looked at a number of these over the years, they can be hard to match, particularly if they don't include outdoor pictures. And there are some of these that they don't. They're just inside. So yes, we do have that company, and they're working on getting that program stood up. Ultimately, MAPD is the enforcing authority and been doing the applications for the zoning permissions as well as the licenses that have come in.
All right, any other questions? In that case, Justin, airport hazard zoning?
Sure. I think we gave a brief update on what this actually was several meetings ago, but just to recap, basically the Airport Hazard Zoning Code regulates development in and around Wichita Dwight D. Eisenhower Airport, Colonel James Jabara Airport, McConnell Air Force Base, Raytheon Airport, Cessna Airport, and the Wichita Police Department Heliport. But the city and county are updating the existing hazard zoning code. The city has hired a consultant to draft updates to the airport hazard zoning code and the associated airport hazard zoning maps. The zoning code and map updates will focus on the Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport as well as the Colonel James Jabara Airport. Staff is currently working with the consultant on draft language to the code and will continue to provide the Advanced Plans Committee with further updates. So again, we've received some code recommendations from the consultants, and we are working with them to go through that language and address any potential changes.
All right, any questions for Justin on the airport zoning? All right, thank you.
Sure.
All right, I think this may be the spot to suggest that we defer the meeting summary. We still don't have a quorum. Can we defer the approval until our next advanced plans meeting? Public comments. Can I ask if there is anyone here from the public who would like to speak? All right, in that case, let's move on to additional business, and I believe Mr. Johnson has something he wants to say.
Since we don't have a quorum, my motion would fall on its face. So I would like to ask staff to report back to us of how much of a problem it would be to have attendance by voice only, no video, and the right to vote with that voice, and limit the number of times you could do that per year to 2. But there are critical times that you're out of town, you'd like to have a quorum here, and you'd like to have your voice heard. So I would make that recommendation, Ms. Foster.
All right. I would say, I don't know how soon it's appropriate to go back at the MAPC level and revisit the whole virtual meeting issue. I personally would like to revisit it. Our composition has changed. Some of the people who were opposed to it are no longer on the board, and especially at the committee level, clearly it's a problem getting a quorum at the committees. So the possibility of virtual attendance seemed to take care of that issue, and now we don't have that option. So
I would just like for us to recommend one way or the other, or if it fails, we don't have to do anything. But if it passes, we could send it to the MAPC for discussion.
Can I ask, is it easier or harder to do just phone, just voice, as opposed to virtual video meeting? Or is it already set up for the virtual video and you'd have to set up something new for the voice only?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but we can get that answer. And if you don't mind, I have a question.
Sure.
Commissioner Johnson, you're wanting staff to bring something back at the next AP meeting, not MAPC, but
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
And also just a quick clarification, you're talking about verbal attendance, so that would be like speakerphone or something like that, not necessarily like a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams meeting, but just attending by voice, just to clarify. Right. Okay.
All right, thank you.
That was my opinion, but somebody else may have it.
I guess what would ever be easiest for staff, right, that would allow participation by the committee, whether it's audio only or audio visual. I mean, if your system is set up that you're using the same equipment for AV, then why not just do AV, right? But if you had to jump through hoops to only do audio, then I guess, again, whatever would make the easiest for staff.
Yeah. What
I was
Brian said.
surprised. I'm surprised that there isn't that option for the reasons of being able to have a quorum and being able to get quality candidates to serve on this. It's tough.
We had
Look at the hours involved with doing this, so.
Impressed that we're worried about staff.
Yes, and we appreciate that.
We do.
We had considerable discussion for members of the public here. Mr. Fry is new to our committee and new to the board here at the moment, but we had been, starting with COVID and going for a couple of years afterward, been allowing video participation, not just video observation. And I personally liked having the option because it meant we were more likely to have a quorum, especially at the committee level. And I had not realized that it was highly irritating to some of our members who felt there just wasn't the same level of communication as you have when people are in the same room. Personally, I also thought it was a really good option for members of the public who might not be able to travel into town and take a workday afternoon off to attend an MAPC meeting, but they could get on their computer and attend virtually. So I would like to ask staff to consider the possibility of revisiting the discussion of video participation and just seeing where we are at the MAPC level at this point, because we have several new members who may have changed their mind about the whole thing.
By consensus, I would agree with your change.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Does anyone remember when the discussion was to remove the option? Because I'd like to go back and review those minutes from MAPC if they exist.
So
Well-
you're asking for exact dates.
Roughly, I can go research.
I'm getting old. It was sometime this past
I'd have
year,
to-
though. I think it was in
It was,
23, but we can get that. We can get that for
Yeah.
you. I mean,
Yeah, just so I have an idea of the history and what was some of the reasoning.
yeah. Yeah, if you look at the agendas, when we started taking the notice off the agendas, it was like 2 meetings before that, I think. So we could probably narrow it down fairly quickly.
We'll go back and
We
review the
meaning
old
staff.
history on that, yeah.
and just so I'm clear now, are we wanting this to come to MAPC instead of come back to AP, or do we want it to go ahead and come back to AP?
Come back to here for a recommendation.
Very good, thank you.
Yep, I'm good with that too. All right, thank you. All right, therefore, is there any other additional business? Okay, our next meeting is Thursday, April 11th, 2024 at 10 a.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Madam Chair, I think it is important to put a number of meetings that you can do that for, so it just doesn't become a habit, that it's easier.
I think that's very.
Because